What's up, humans of the world and possibly outer space, if you have subscribed to our RSS feed? Welcome to the podcast club. We are excited to have a special guest tonight, Chris Krimitsos of Podfest. Really excited to have him on tonight. We're going to also talk about, what happened in 2021, what's coming up next, or what's going to happen in 2021, what happened in 2020, what's going on in the podcast world. It should be a lot of fun. So welcome to the show. What's up, guys? How's everybody doing?
Great.
Good.
Awesome. Killing it.
Good to see Chris.
I know, right? Excellent to see Chris. Always a beautiful. Chris was the last time I left my house. Basically, it was Podfest Expo in Orlando.
March. It was like let's get an event in before the apocalypse hits.
Yeah, was that like the last event on the planet that happened? It feels
pretty
like
sure it was.
It felt like it because Marcus, all the events around us in that hotel were canceling in real time.
Yeah.
I remember before we went into Podfest, they were like, listen, you have to be out of the ballroom at 12 noon on Sunday. And I was like, why? They're like, we have an event at 3 or 4 p.m. that has to set up. I'm like, all right. A day later, they're like, good news. I'm like, what's that? You could have the ballroom as long as you want on Sunday. We'll give you all the extra space. And I was just like, it felt like doing an event while like the ground you walk on is crumbling. It was a really weird feeling. Yeah. And we all kind of knew, like, this might be the last time we'll see each other for some time. I don't think we realized how long it would be at that point of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, those hugs hit a little different for sure. You know what I mean?
Oh, man, yeah, I was treasure. I kind of knew it was going to be pretty bad. I thought maybe 6 months. I knew it was going to be bad. Most people weren't factoring in yet. So I was just enjoying every second because I'm like, that Thursday, Molly, I took Neil Gilarte. He's an editor, and I said, Neil, let's go out to dinner. And I took him, Gabe, and my friend Ruben, who was helping me behind the scenes. We're like, we're going to go out to dinner. And this will probably be the last dinner the four of us will have for a very long time. And they were laughing. They're like, you're so funny. And I don't drink. I ordered a martini. They're like, you're drinking? I'm like, yeah. And I go, this is not, we're not going to be like, I don't think you guys get it. This is it. And literally they couldn't believe, like a few days later, like, you were right. We're amazed. Like we can't go out to dinner. I'm like, you could see the writing on the wall when you started seeing what was happening in Italy, then New York City, and all that.
Yeah, man. Well, you did a really great job of going virtual this year. That's for sure. You killed it on that, and then followed up with VidFest. So, cheers to you for that one, man.
Broke a Guinness World Record, right?
We set one, and now we're gonna try and break it. So nice. We're gearing up now to break it. And then we're not doing it for a long time. It takes so much energy, and we all did it together. I think we have enough as a community to do it one more time. But after that, I just want to set it so out of reach no one else could attain it at this point. That's kind of like more of a pride thing, all of us together collectively. But after that, I'm not messing with just the dealing with the Guinness World Record. A lot of people don't realize, you guys probably do, but just to allow each speaker to have their logo on the cards is a negotiation for each speaker. So it's a pain in the butt, but we love doing it, and we're up for the challenge because our community was up for it. But Molly, we learned a lot about community in that there's a lot of crappy ones, there's some really great ones, and our community came alive virtually, not because we're like some virtual Jedi masters. It's just we have a great community, so we all like helped each other out, and like we're supporting each other, and that I think virtual just exposes the strength or lack thereof very quickly because you evaluate your time much different when you're at home and you could do 10 other things while you're sitting there at your computer.
I agree, man. And your community is so strong. I mean, the gratitude ceremony at the end of Podfest every year, like that's just the coolest thing I've ever seen, man. Just all the, hundreds of people literally lining up to like get on the microphone. So Adam, at the end of Podfest, like there's a gratitude ceremony, and
I've seen the videos.
Okay, yeah.
It's amazing.
It's the most feel good shit ever. Like Disney's got nothing on you, man. You know what I'm saying? Like
that started year 2. We just didn't want, none of us wanted to leave. And I just took a mic and I was like, if anyone wants to say anything, coming up. And literally all 100 people lined up. So I added a second mic. as a producer, you're looking like, where's my second mic? We didn't have many. I was like, all right, guys, double file. And then it became a tradition. We're trying to figure out how to like put a time cap on it, but that's our closing keynote. But
You need
But
a
you know-
shot clock,
yeah, well, no one follows the clock, unfortunately. You have a group of podcasters. That's their moment to share.
You give them a mic and they're just going to run with it.
Yeah, the coolest story was Maxwell Ivy, the blind blogger. He got up there and he was like, Chris gives out these treasure maps to go fill them out with the sponsors. And when he said that, I realized he's blind. So I was like, how does he? He's like, he goes, I was just going to throw it in the garbage. How am I going to fill it out? I can't see. And I was like, oh, man, didn't think that one. Like, you want to. But he said, he goes, I believe in this community. So I walked in and I got the first exhibitor to sign. Then each exhibitor took him hand by hand to the next exhibitor. And he got his entire treasure map. You can't not tear up. You're like, holy crap. Like the exhibitors actually took it upon themselves to make sure he was taking care of it. Everybody signed his treasure map. It's like 50 exhibitors. It was amazing. So it's just cool.
That's even more impactful than like rich people buying each other Starbucks at the drive-through. You know what I mean? It's so much better than that. So yeah,
that's unreal.
It's awesome. It's all well. Listen, this is a crazy year, but I'm excited I'm curious to see what you guys have to say about the innovations that you're seeing in the marketplace. I know like the biggest news or consistent biggest news is Spotify bought another company. It seems like every other week, it's like a new company they gobble up. And then you got everybody else playing catch up in some way as far as acquisitions wise. I don't know. We'll see how it translates to, the content creator. That's what I'm always looking for. Like, how does that impact the independents? How does that help them, or does it?
Absolutely.
For sure. And I mean, that's kind of the bigger picture, right? So, I was compiling the list, of 2020's acquisitions, right? So I'll go through those now. February 2020, Spotify bought The Ringer for 196 mil. July, SiriusXM bought Stitcher for 325 million.
Wow.
In July, Sirius also bought Simplecast, but I couldn't figure out the numbers on that. I don't know if it was part of the Stitcher deal. In July, New York Times purchased Serial Productions for 25 million. And then in July, again, they bought Joe Rogan, Spotify did, for 100 million. In September, Chartable raised 2.25 million for a 3.75 million total venture investment. In November, Spotify bought Megaphone for 235 million, and in December, Amazon is in talks to acquire Wondery for 300 plus million. And so, when you look at those numbers, like, that's a lot of bread, for real. Like, that's a lot of dollars, right? And so for me, the number one thing that I question is like, why are they spending so much money on these companies? Just kidding. The answer is data, right? And like, this is the next wave of advertising. But, it also begs the question, does any of this matter, right? Like, because there's enough people talking about how this is going to, it's over for podcasting. Like, I read this article on Forbes, this older guy who's like clearly been in, I think he was like a stagehand or a sound guy at one point because he's just unreasonably ornery. And he's like, podcasting is over. I mean, it's just so good. He's just so stereotypical old, like, sound guy. But, who's it over for? Is it over for Spotify spending more money? Is it over for the independents? Is it over for branded Like, who are we talking about here, and what do they consider success, right? So what does that really mean to the content creators? Like, the real question, like, I know Marcus has some input on this because, we both came from the music business, right? So there's two sides to the music business. There's like the big money deals, and then there's independent artists, right? But like, people are making money, right, on both sides of that table. So,
yeah, Chris mentioned, what it means for independent podcasters. That's exactly it. Because I feel like, and especially at Podfest, that community is built on the independent podcaster. And these big corporate deals, while they're kind of bringing more exposure overall for the audience to podcasting as a platform, as a new media, especially for, people that just weren't aware that podcasting even existed, which can be a good thing. But like it, it doesn't mean anything to me. Like it's interesting that these corporations are spending money, but like Molly said, with the music industry, you got these record labels that spend millions and millions of dollars doing sponsorships and participating in award shows and all this stuff, signing new talent and developing new talent. And I feel like that's kind of what's going on here with these corporate entities. They're kind of curating talent, but you have to look at the motivation of it, and it is purely money. And for me, like, yes, I make a living as a podcaster, but in the independent community, I don't care if you're a musician, photographer, writer, filmmaker, whatever it is, the independent community is all about the passion. And yes, we want to make a living, obviously. And this, there was that a couple years ago when everything just kind of blew up. There was that whole rising tide, raises all ships type thing. So it's going to help boost me, not like me as an audio guy. Like I have my music industry friends saying, "Oh, you do podcasts?" Like kind of looking down at me because I'm not doing music. But now podcasting is serious. They're like, "Oh, cool," It's just interesting.
Well, yeah, right. It's like, well, what does success look like? Like, what is that metric really, right? So, you could get a sponsor for your podcast to give you $300 an episode as a small business that's like speaking to the same community. And then that same podcast, if you left it up to whatever, insert any one of these new ad platforms that automatically pair you with advertisers for your podcast, they're going to give you like 47 cents. Right. So like, what is the actual metric of success? And like, what does winning look like? If you're doing a branded podcast, you might be doing that to get more clients. Right. And you might only need 3 more clients to increase your bottom line 250%, depending on what your business is. Right. Yeah. Like if I had 10 new clients, that would dramatically improve my business next month. If I had 100 new clients, it would destroy my business next month. You know what I mean? So like, what does success really look like? And if we're only measuring it in like TikTok numbers, as far as like, I have 1 million followers. Well, okay, cool. But like, I can still make money off of 1,000 followers, right? So like, what is that metrics? I feel like, Chris, you deal with so many individuals and you see it all the time. You see so many wins in so many different ways for podcasters, whether it's connection with people or actual dollars or a job opportunity, right? Like you could probably give 1 million examples of how podcasts have positively influenced people.
Well, I think a lot of the independents shouldn't go the CPM route. The majority of them, which is, cost per thousand, where they make like, I don't know, 12 to 15. Maybe if you're lucky, you keep 20 because usually you have an agent or someone that brought you the deal. So you got to give them a third from what I've seen. So let's say you're getting 1,000 downloads, that's $20 literally. So
right.
So fine, the person that's got hundreds of thousands could make some money. Totally get it. But the independent, the majority of them, maybe 200 downloads, 500. So like a really great thing, we had Ariel Smith of the Food Truck Scholar. She represents a really diverse group of food trucks, like from, all over like certain cities up, usually Northeast, but all over the country. And what's she going to do? Sell that and make $10? Like the cost of production just costs so much more. So we were able to connect her to 2 other independent producers that had figured out, they shared their sponsor decks with her, and she was able to land a 5-figure sponsor because guess what? Food trucks are a niche. There are apps that need food trucks. They're funded in the millions. They could invest a nice, healthy 5-figure so this young lady could keep making her art and get paid for it. So we're really excited to see, we have to help and change people's paradigms around what those downloads are worth for the indie, for many of them. So that's kind of what we're looking at. And then, there's just a lot of different case studies. Lee Silverstein with We Have Cancer, that's more of an NGO type niche, so he gets sponsored by a lot of semi-quasi nonprofit, non-government agencies that have funds that want to help get the word out about, cancer support, not from a clinical side, because those podcasts are out there, but from a human side of someone that has it and is thriving and could share with people. So there's a lot of case studies out there. It's just what Marcus said. I look at these acquisitions. It's all great, But then when you think about it, like, how does it impact the independent? Most of them don't. Because Marcus, I try and write. You'll appreciate this, Molly. I try and like write an article about it. I'm like, why should my audience care? It doesn't really impact them unless they're getting some kind of ad dollars. Because sometimes, like, I'll send out an email. I'm like, but it doesn't pertain to them. Like, I don't know how that's going to improve their life. So I always try and wrap my head around like what will help them. I do think Spotify though does have some good monetization through Anchor for certain people. If you ask, you have to request dynamic ad insertion. They could help you with that. But and Anchor's owned by Spotify. If you don't know, so there's some stuff that is trickling down. They're trying to follow the YouTube model, which seems like they're going to do well with it, but remains to be seen. So we'll see. We'll see how it shapes up.
Yeah, on that, Chris, you'll be interested in this. I have one client that is on Anchor, and he's got a fairly decent-sized audience. So he has a combination of both the baked-in ads that he gets, a contract price for the month or whatever, and then he also will sprinkle in the dynamic ads when he's only got one or that sort of thing. The only sponsor so far to take advantage of the dynamic ad slot in his show that's fairly successful. Anchor.
Yeah, right. I knew you were going to say that. Anchor sponsors their own shows. You know what they're doing, Marcus. Spotify is sponsoring these podcasts because they're furiously trying to sell ads to companies just like YouTube does.
Yeah.
So they're plugging it with their own money till they could get a funnel of advertisers. So, kudos to them that they're actually putting their money back into the content creators, but they're waiting to sell ads. So they're telling everybody, just wait, we'll have advertisers for you.
Yeah,
that's
but
what I was going to say.
The
go
biggest,
ahead, Marcus.
Yeah, just real quick on that. The biggest sponsor this month I just saw this week was BetterHelp. They dropped $39 million in ads this month. They're a sponsor this week on my client's podcast. Is it dynamic? No, it's a baked-in ad.
He got them from AdvertiseCast, I'm assuming.
I don't know. They have a whole team. I'm not dealing with the advertising.
So that company will not lowball, but it's like, hey, if you want us, this is what we'll pay, and they'll go 8 to 10, sometimes 12 max.
Okay.
So they will go around the marketplace, but it's like cutthroat rates. However, you will see their ads everywhere.
Yeah, interesting.
I was going to say is like as a business owner who's interested in sponsoring and advertising right now with so many different platforms, it's kind of confusing. Like, I don't know where to look or who to talk to, or do you approach just the individual, or is there a way to get across multiple things? And I can see, that it only benefits the big guys right now, but as there's more of a homogenized way to engage with a community of podcasts of different segments or different types, I'm more inclined. It's like when Facebook advertising started, like it was Wild West, and now there's a bit more structure to it. I can make a really cool ad on my own that hits a very specific target that I want to hit, and I know that it's going to land with the right people. And then you get data and so stuff like that. So I can see that with all these acquisitions and stuff like that, while the big ones are getting bigger, there's also going to be more opportunities for more people to engage with podcasting as it becomes a little bit more mainstream. I think the same thing, when we get to it, but the same thing happening with gear, like it's becoming more mainstream. So there's more facilities and tools being built around the podcasting community that are uniform, that it's not just like, oh, I work with this way and I'm unwilling to work with this, or I can't do this or the other thing. It's going to become more, all the social media platforms for the most part are kind of the same in a lot of ways, and kind of like how they operate on the back end and the advertising. And once you know one, you can execute on multiple. And I think that's pretty exciting as someone that works on the business side of it, the advertising side of it, and seeing new people come in and they're kind of lost in which one. It's such a big, which one am I going to stick with, or what platform am I going to go with? Then it becomes more like make your content and let the machine kind of work for you, instead of it kind of being like do or die.
Yeah. Check out Spotify, Adam. They already have, they're repping business owners to get them into podcasts and niches. I would just ask them.
I literally wrote that down 5 seconds ago. I was like, I need to check this out right now.
You could do one of two things. You could actually put an ad on Spotify, like a Facebook ad, so it advertises in front of a podcast, or you could be repped, I believe, and they could then cherry pick the podcast that would best fit you, and the podcaster would, do a real rip and read. So there's a premium for that.
It's cool.
That would probably do really well for podcast outfitters, honestly.
Yeah. I'm literally going to hit that up tomorrow. So I've worth the price of admission for me. So
There you go. Yeah. Check. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. So whenever anybody mentions Anchor, my eye starts twitching a little bit. I can't help it. But like, I'm super curious because there's so much, right? Pod Fade is 7 episodes, but Pod Flash is like not getting past 1. And I heard a stat. I'm an over exaggerator. It's what I do. And I think it was like 82%, but we're just going to say like 96% of podcasts on Anchor like haven't made it past 1%. So it just doesn't feel like a great bet. Like if my long game, right, is to like, and this kind of was my long game with One Love. I was like, well, I'll bring all these artists in, we'll create content, we'll have all this content, we'll have this, crazy YouTube channel, and then people will want to advertise on it, right? And we had artists who constantly created content. In Anchor's situation, it feels similar, except all of their artists do one podcast and never come back. And so that doesn't seem like great places to sell advertising. It seems like their talent pool is a bunch of quitters. You know what I'm saying? So,
well, because of the freemium model is a majority of them, but
yeah.
if you look at iTunes too, it's only a third are active. So it's more in Anchor for sure, but it's accentuated because of the freemium, but it is what it is, So I've come to accept it. I felt the way you do, Molly. At this point, it's like they're in the game. Yeah. You know what they do for the more experienced podcasters? They're assigning reps to them, and they're actually helping them in a major way. So that I respect because they'll have a rep walk you through. But I know what you're talking about because I've heard these shows where someone literally launches it off their cell phone, and you'll never hear it again. And it's sometimes their kid talking. There's no production. But that's part of the freemium model. However, the challenge is not everybody talks to professionals like us that might say, hey, check out, Libsyn, all these other ones, Podbean, whatever, Buzzsprout, all these great ones. They're going to say, check out the free, just like MailChimp took off, just like, all these. Right. The freemium always, there's another one with the email called MailerLite out of Europe, and they were our sponsor. They're giving people like 3,000 emails for free. I couldn't believe it. And they're the fastest growing company in the country for email right now. So it's just
signed up with them.
Yeah, there you go. And they're great, but it's just a freemium model usually, from the software perspective. But as far as what you were talking about, what I saw this past year, I saw video. I saw this coming 2-3 years ago, but this year I think we all saw it. And Molly, you and I bonded. I know Marcus Rito, but when I saw Molly, she talked about video. I was like, amen, because we were in a group of all audiophiles. Video was already getting, hybridizing with audio because podcasting 4 or 5 years ago was audio. When you said podcasting, it meant audio only. But now we're seeing this hybridization, and the consumer sometimes thinks a YouTube channel is a podcast. They can't tell the difference. So you have to explain to them, like, depending on what it is. But I do see a lot of what we're doing now, like a lot of live streaming, a lot of video. It's all integrating, and I would say this was the pivotal year where it collided because everybody was home, and they might as well have the video on when they're streaming onto whatever social platform. So I think this is the year where all of that kind of melted in. Makes me happy because at PodFest we also have VidFest, so we kind of already planned 3-4 years, so that bakes into our plan to grow and give everybody a choice. But I'm seeing a lot of YouTubers. You know what I'm seeing with the young YouTubers that like all they do is practical jokes? Well, they age out of that around 2022. And like Logan Paul has a podcast. Like they start having podcasts because that's an older, when I say older, I mean like 22 or older, not much older. But it is old when you're talking about a 10-year-old to 15 to 20. But it seems like podcasting is a more mature play, and they're following in the steps of a lot of the OG podcasters and creating a studio with video and all that. And I think we're going to see a lot more transition. Like Adam said, that means a lot more studios and more money going into really nice looking studios, not just slapping something together. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that.
And I think in the same vein, I'm going to jump in with one of my picks for top products of the year, which goes right into it, is Black Magic ATEM Mini, which I know Marcus is using right there.
Yes.
You're seeing products that are purpose-built for how this is going down right now. USB, HDMI cameras to USB to your computer. There was no product that could do this last year. It didn't exist. you had to spend a couple $1,000
Yep.
and like jerry rig it together and learn how to actually mix video. And then a $295 item came out that solved all the problems and did way more than anyone thought. It's becoming this was literally like the best-selling thing I saw all year. And I think that's very telling. Like, it's becoming accessible. I'm always a champion of like that the technology, if you understand it, it can like unlock all this really cool potential that you can do. So yeah, you're going to see studios that are definitely, you know, you got to focus on the audio, and everything else I have is audio focused. But when it's that easy to incorporate video, how can you ignore it? You know, how can you ignore that other opportunity to kind of display your, you know, your content on YouTube or any other platform like that?
And Adam, I don't think a lot of people could. I don't know if they could appreciate. Like, I remember I started out public access where they had like an old media switching board, and we used to use DVC Pro tapes. And then I remember we got these things called the TriCaster, and I was like, my mind was blown. It was like 15 to 20 grand at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It was a pivotal thing, but I don't know if people could appreciate. Like, now we're at home. He's talking about Black Magic, which is a premium brand, and they're creating stuff for the person at home, or their switching software is cheap. This stuff used to cost like so much money. I remember the station
So
got the
much money.
TriCaster. We're like, only 15,000. That thing included the cameras and all. We were like, our heads were blowing up because of how affordable it was getting. But now it's coming down to the consumer, which I love.
Yeah, and this I mean, the same goes, you know, the Rodecaster was last year, but that immediately changed everything for everybody. Like, I keep talking about it, but like to handle a phone call on a podcast used to be literally rocket science, and you had to figure out to do it right. Like, everyone's like, oh no, you could just get a cable and do this, and then you have a phone call. Like, no. Like, it was crazy, and to make the push of a button on Bluetooth was remarkable, and that Rode was ahead of the game coming out with a product that was purpose built for podcasting. And that opened up the floodgates for all this other cool stuff to come out that literally changed the game for so many. You know, like, it made it so much easier to produce at a high level, or at least capture at a high level, so that it doesn't take an arm and a leg to like make something sound passable, so that you get to that point where you are having fun doing it, and it's not a barrier to entry that you have a studio, a massive studio. Like, you can create at home pretty simply if you're willing to just, like, you know, get involved with it.
Yeah, don't be afraid of the technology, right? You know, and I got to give a shout out to Switcher Studio, though, because I will say Switcher Studio came correct with some solid software in 2016 or 16. I think it might even been around earlier. So Switcher Studio, but that all works off of iOS devices. So you use your iPad as the switcher, iPhones as the cameras, and that connects. You run that with an iRig into your system. And so now if you're going to do, and that's how I set up my, you know, podcast studios, because, you know, you're using iPhones with 4K cameras in a very well lit, like, you know, me and Marcus come from, me, Adam, and Marcus all come from the music business where like nothing is well lit. And so I'm like, yeah, we're in the studio with the lights on. Why wouldn't I use an iPhone? The subject is 3 feet away across the table. So I just set up cameras with cross angles, and I was able to switch the cameras. But people thought I was a legit magician when I figured this out, because it didn't require
Big time.
But then you're limited to it only works with iOS devices. So, like, you know, if you do have a bunch of old iPhones and stuff, you should look into Switcher if you're looking to do video switching with what you already have, right? You know, because that's another great product. But if you want to use anything outside of iPhones, yeah, there was nothing, and there still isn't anything other than, like, you know, there's no software, right, other than this Black Magic piece of equipment. So it's a game changer for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there are companies that made pro level video switchers that are just coming out with, like, you know, capture cards to go along with their stuff, because streaming was never really a part of it. Right. There was a separate streaming device that did it, and you just had a video switcher that was really cool and did a lot, but it didn't solve the problem, or it didn't give you a solution to what you were doing right now. And that opened the floodgates. And now this year was the first year, I think, where you saw a lot of stuff purpose-built for podcasting, and I think that's what's most exciting for 2021, is that we've just started to see, you know, a flurry of product come out in the end of Q3, Q4 that are you know, like Chris, you said earlier, like podcasting was like DIY. Like you had to you had a recording studio or you had a broadcast studio. You had to figure out what the hell you were going to do, or you had a multi-track recorder and you had a bunch of microphones and you just made this stuff work. Now there's stuff that's coming out that is called like a pod mic, you know, like it's meant for podcasting, and it's not just like, oh, podcasting's like cheap stuff, like no, like it's cool stuff that's meant for this community, that's going to deliver the look, the feel, the sound, like all this really cool stuff. And there's options now too. It's not just like, oh, you must have an SM7B, which is the industry standard. Like there's reasons why that is, but now you got choices too, to at least, you know, you don't have, you know, a ton of money to throw into it. You can still get into it at a level that's really cool, and get it, you know, do it at a level that's acceptable. That's definitely acceptable.
Yeah, you could buy 4 of those road bikes for one of my SM7Bs.
And this is, I mean,
Looks
I think
nice
this came out at the end of last year, the Rode Pod mic, but man, did it crush this year. And this is like a feat of engineering. I mean, this thing weighs a ton. It looks super cool. It sounds as good as anything else, like, you know, especially for $99. So this is definitely one of my picks for 2020. And Rode as a company has been on point making stuff for the podcasting community. They were kind of far and wide in what they did, studio microphones and camera microphones, but they hit their stride with podcasting this year with the pod mic and the Rodecaster, really like solving a lot of people's problems.
Yeah,
super cool.
Adam, you know what else we learned? Molly, you'll appreciate this, so will you, Marcus? We learned that every celebrity that's like a radio celebrity has no equipment at home to, and every newscaster has zero equipment at home to broadcast, and they had no clue how to use it. So they need 10 producers to plug in a USB. If they had a USB. I mean, I don't know how many times you were like, these people don't have a freaking mic at home? Like, can't we send them? And I know, Adam, you were dealing with them, I'm sure.
Or they have a Yeti and they have it backwards or upside down.
Don't even get me started with the Yetis. Every time
I
you
saw it
see
on the
one,
news.
you're
Like one of the first weeks of shutdown, I saw a newscaster pointing at the wrong one. I'm like, you're on the news, man. Like you have a whole team of people and you just can't make it look the right way. Like, come on, people.
Just goes to show you how how removed they are to the production side. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
They got people wiping their butts at a level that they don't even know how to like use a mic.
That's right.
Well, that's the difference with a podcaster, you know, is that you're not
right.
just the talent, but you're very hands-on with the process for the most. You have to be, even when you're in the studio, you have to be, and now even more so, you have to know like what being on mic is, or at least buy the right product. Like Molly has the MV7, which I think is one of the best ones of the year, that solves a lot of problems for a lot of people because it just takes care of it for you. But that's like, you know, that got the job done. You know, having someone basically live inside your microphone that deals with all the nonsense for you so that you can sound good enough that you can send that file to someone to actually finish it off. Like that ain't so easy with something like this.
Right.
You know, you actually have to have like decent mic technique and know a little bit about how to like present yourself for podcasts and handle yourself. This is kind of like, you don't really need to know too much. Like you just plug this thing in and turn it on and
auto gain.
You'll do all right.
Yeah.
That's why I like it. You know what I'm saying? No
or you go with my
technique
goofy ass headset and, you know, you can just bounce around and do whatever. But
I love how you insulted your headset before me or Marcus could this week. You're like, I'm going
I have to jump in.
I almost feel like Adam's about to get into a plane and fly it, you know?
You know, it gets the job done, guys. It gets it done.
Hey, listen,
all right?
if you're on, yeah, it definitely does.
I can spin around. I can do whatever.
You kind of look like the guy from Airplane, actually, now that you've said that. Maybe it's just like subtle suggestion, but I'm like, seriously, you should be here for Halloween whenever
all right.
we're allowed to.
I will share this with all of us here and anyone like formulating. The one thing I think audio has an advantage of, because of video, back in the day, a lot of people don't remember, there was like 9 video sites. It was YouTube, Vidler, I could go Vimeo and YouTube were the only ones that kind of survived. Gary Vee back then, I remember I had brought him in to speak. He's like, hey, Vidler's it. That was his pick. I had 900 videos on Vidler. Vidler went belly up. The difference with audio, it took so long for audio to like pick up and like gain traction, I don't think any one player, I think they could get a piece of it, but they can't dominate the way Google took everybody out of video. And then there was this niche player called Vimeo who high quality. I have a feeling Amazon's coming in. They got, their different pieces of it. You got, YouTube's got some podcasting going on there as well. And then you got iTunes, which is an ambivalent, like, no one really knows what they're about, but they're there. Spotify. And then you got all these players, like hundreds of little players that people use. So we'll see, it's going to consolidate, but I don't think you could get to like one player because there's just so much competition. So we're lucky that it took a while for people to wake up to the power of on-demand audio. So I think it still is giving us a lot more choices, whereas video got consolidated very quickly back then. And now it's opening back up with the on-demand services. But as far as the consumer, if you're an independent video creator, my assumption is YouTube is 95, if not 98% of the game. I'm pretty sure of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be really curious to hear like what some of these venture capital investor meetings are like for these, new companies, startups and stuff that are building these gated platforms for podcasting, because I feel like with the whole independent versus corporate thing, there's like the world of the people who want to have that control so they can monopolize like YouTube, like you're saying, and just reap all the financial benefits from that. But that's what, again, makes independent podcasting so important, because just the nature of the platform and how we control our own RSS feed, and we have to submit it to these indexes to show up for people to actually listen to it. And it's going to take a major, major shift somewhere in the industry for someone to be able to dominate. And I don't see it happening right now. Spotify is kind of working its way up by just buying these things one at a time. But they are still, like with my clients' podcast, they're still well under 20% of the listener audience. There's still 60% of the listeners use Apple. So yeah, from a consumer standpoint, Apple is dominating how people get the content delivered, but there's no model for that to be monetized for other than just the regular ad stuff, which we've been doing, which is interesting.
Well, and don't forget, Rogan went over to Spotify and he lost a huge, like people thought, oh, the audience will just transfer.
Yeah.
His audience did not just transfer. And now they're running clips on YouTube furiously trying to get him over to Spotify. And I was reading some of the comments and people like, I don't like Spotify. There's no comments. I can't read what other people think. And that's a huge difference because there's a community of people that talk and comment, whether they agree or disagree with whoever Rogan has on. You can't do that on Spotify. So now there's no communal, as that's what I saw in the comments. I'm not a Spotify power user, so I can't really speak to if there's active comments. But obviously, for them to be saying that, they were saying there's no comments for them to interact with what's going on.
Yeah.
That makes sense, though, right? I mean, I don't like Spotify either. I mean, they can still buy me, just saying. But, I had a Spotify account, like, back in the day, when they first popped up. And I didn't pay for it. I just, barely used it. And it's just, if I have to pick my own music, I'm going to listen to the same 4 songs. And so, and every time you put on, like, a Bob Marley mix, I always play UB40, and then I'm out. That's, like, a deal breaker. I'm like, Red Red Wine is not a Bob Marley song. God damn it. And then I lose all respect for that platform. So I do close my account. And then for like a year, I would get an email every time somebody in my contact list, they'd be like, hey, Adam Levin joined Spotify. Like, I don't give a shit, man. Like, why are you still emailing me? I unsubscribed from that thing like 14 times, man. Like, it got to the point that it was like really a nuisance in my life. You know what I mean? And so I'll never go back to Spotify. Like, plus I'm also really big on democratization of information, right? Like, that's why I love YouTube, because anybody can watch it from anywhere in the world and they don't have to pay for it. They don't have to have an email address. They don't have to have an account. You know what I mean? And I think all that matters, right? And I think that's really, that distribution element of iTunes. Like, if you have an iPhone, it's already on your phone. You know what I mean? You might accidentally press a button and like you just gave them like another 1% of the listener share, from like accidentally opening the app. So like, I don't know. I think this paywall idea, it's like, what's worse, right? Like, you're paywalling content and then you're selling ads on it, or like Facebook where you just make us all addicted to it and then you sell ads on it. Like, I don't know which one's worse, or maybe like it's all shit and we need to get off this ship. You know what I mean? Like I don't know, but it's
Does
just,
anyone know anything about the Apple privacy? Because they were talking about Apple's gonna.
yeah.
Even in my Facebook, it said, "Hey, here's what's going on." I didn't read it today, but it had all kinds of warnings. I went into my Facebook ad account around Apple privacy and how that's going to impact Facebook's reach, because Apple is protecting people's information from being stalked and followed.
Yeah.
Which is cool. I'll give them that.
Yeah, I think it gives the consumer, kind of, Molly, what you're saying, some controls over their stuff. I don't know about them following, but I know I'll talk about something and I see ads pop up, but I never searched it. I don't know if you guys have had that experience.
Yeah.
For sure.
My neighbor's cat, he lost it, and the cat's name is Jerry. So I was talking about Jerry to a friend. Next thing I know, my phone starts popping up Tom and Jerry videos, which I've never.
Whoa.
It was really weird. I'm like, I haven't searched Tom and Jerry. Like, it was a couple other things, but that one was the one that really freaked me out. I was like, you gotta be careful what you say. It's like tracking everything.
Yeah, I used to always get ads for affordable rehab, and I was always a little offended by that. You know, like, I can afford regular rehab. God damn it, you know, like, don't box me in. But it makes you wonder, like, what was I talking about? Quite frankly, you know. Like, yeah, I mean, we're all just getting sold, right? Like, that's really what it is. I mean, that's what I think is behind the whole Anchor buyout. I think it's just data. I think they're just collecting. It's more of those data points that Cambridge, you know, warned us about. You know, like I think that has a lot to do with it. Like, what are they spending? You know, where are they spending their time? Where are these people located? Email addresses, opportunities. I mean, how much industry is the podcast industry created? How much commerce has it created, you know?
Well, and all these companies are coming out of the same areas too, like whether it's New York, LA.
Yeah.
It's in the same, Marcus was talking about, it's like in the same investment families or groups, if that makes sense. So it almost seems like they're just picking off what's ever in these groups, because it's coming. Most of them are coming out of 2 or 3 cities, most of these acquisitions.
Yeah, and it sounds like these investors are frustrated because they want it to work like Facebook, where you get all this data that you can sell or that you can target specific people. And that's one of the things that as an independent podcaster I love, is because I've got control. Nobody's getting my data, you know, and as a consumer too. In podcasts, it's just an RSS feeding. So it's the app itself that you have to think of tracking you. So Spotify, you know, only your Spotify listeners, you only get that data from that part of the audience, and there's still all the other, you know, more than half of the listeners that I don't have any of that targeted data for. All I have is the download. That's why people obsess about the download numbers.
Well, yes and no, right? So when I was talking with Brian Barletta about this, like, some companies, like Libsyn wasn't, I don't know if they are now, but they like put a privacy screen on the RSS feeds that you're listening to, because, you know, people could get in trouble. Like if you're in a anti-gay or anti-Muslim or anti-whatever place, right? Like, you know, China is actually, all of a sudden the Chinese government is dialed into podcasters because they're like, oh, y'all are probably saying some shit we don't want you to say, right? So they're like figuring out how they can censor podcasts. So it's kind of the same thing. It's like, depending on where you live, you could get in trouble just based on what you're watching or what you're listening to. And so if they have it masked, the RSS, like if the name is like My Big Gay Podcast, right? Like that could get you in a lot of trouble in a lot of places in the world just for listening to that or associating to that at all, right? Some of the less advanced civilizations, obviously, but, you know, nonetheless. So it's pretty interesting because there is more data, it's the point, that than meets the eye based on like what it is you're listening to or what RSS feeds you're subscribed to. So I not that I claim to know. I think Brian could give us a lot of insight on that, but like there's a lot of information about us and our behaviors and our listeners' behaviors that's being tracked that we're not aware of yet, you know.
Are you benefit? I don't ever like look at the data for podcasting. Do you guys benefit from? Do you know who your listeners are? No. Do you know? Not at all.
We know age range. You know, like certain like age demographics. You know what cities you're doing well in, but you can't target the as far as I know,
And
you can't go.
you get that from your host. Like the best host would deliver to you that level of data. So I can imagine, like, just playing devil's advocate, like, it's while yeah, it's scary to know that there's that much known about you. It also makes sure or helps the producer of the content deliver more, more
Relevant.
specific content and relevant content to the end user. If I knew that all of my people were 22 and under and all they wanted to do is play pranks on each other, well, then I'd make a lot more content about making pranks and how to make pranks than I would about pontificating about, gear if they weren't interested
Well,
in
and
it.
you could
Like
see the episodes that spike, and then you could
Right.
figure out based on topics. Yep.
You can
right, and
extrapolate
you
it.
could get, like, that's how when we run our social media is like, oh, we know a guitar post is going to do really well for our music store. So we put a little more focus there than some other categories just because we know that's right now where our audience is, and we work to build other things. But like, if you knew that level of data, how much better could your content be, or how much more relevant could it be if you're losing, comments and engagement from certain platforms? Maybe you'll gain insights into people from some of that data. And it's a murky world. It totally is. It's super scary to know that we're going to talk about this and I'm going to get an ad in 10 minutes on my phone that is talking about Tom and Jerry or something like that. But the hope, I guess, is that if you don't know, if you watched what was the Netflix thing that told us all that it's not all
Social
sunshine and
Dilemma.
rainbows. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's totally more on the scary side of things than not. But the original idea wasn't so scary. You know what I mean? And I guess that's kind of like, to the keepers of the kingdom, like, how are you going to drive this ship, and how ethical are you going to be with how the data is used? But there's always someone that's going to take a liberty with it, I guess.
Well, and then it's like, who has access to the data, right? Because, like, I produce podcasts for people, and so I have a grip of clients now, and they're all on Podbean, and we're, like, getting a little annoyed with all our Podbean logins. So I was like, yo, let me hit them up and see about an enterprise plan. Maybe I can. And the jump from, like, what I'm paying now, and I pay for my clients, like, for a year in advance, the jump from, like, just paying that to, like, putting everybody on an enterprise account was, like, hundreds of dollars a month. Like, there was no upside. However, I got considerably more in-depth analytics if I have an enterprise account.
Of course.
And so, I'm not trying to talk shit about Podbean because I know I love y'all, but I'm just saying, like, how come the amount of information that I get about my own content is contingent on how much money I pay? So, like, who
power.
does have all that data, and what are they doing with it, and how come I gotta pay? Like, I just don't fully understand that. Like, so is it just like Blueberry and Libsyn and Podbean guys are sitting around drinking brandies on the weekends, like, laughing it up about how much of our analytics? Because, you know what I mean? Like, I don't really understand. Like, is that the only thing they can gate their platform to get more money out of us? Like, I don't fully understand.
I think Apple has the most of everybody, but they won't really put out much. So.
But it is where the money's at.
Right.
If I, as a business owner, knew that you were speaking to this specific demographic that was interested in these things, but also was interested in these 10 other things that were similar, then maybe right now you're going to get someone that is hyper relevant to your audience. Like, Podcast Outfitters is going to place an ad on a podcast about podcasting. Okay, like, that is super linear and that makes sense. But what about if our target audience are 30 to 40 somethings that are into podcasting, but they also live in these areas, and maybe there is a direct to consumer cooking something that is relevant to that community, like, they wouldn't know otherwise. So it's all about following the money, right? But it's also about, like, how much more relevant can you make it? How much cooler can you make if you use it the right way, right? You got to hope that it ends up in the right people's hands, but ultimately, like, it's going to deliver a better experience to the end user if they're getting an ad that's relevant to them, instead of one that's just completely from left field. The dynamic sort of ad that just kind of drops in out of nowhere. And you're like, why am I hearing that ad right now? Like, what did that have to do with anything? As opposed to when you're like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I might check that out after I listen to this podcast because these people had it, and that's me, and I see myself in that, and that's cool. Like, there really is, like, that's where all the money's going, right? I mean, that's why Facebook is a major marketing platform. Instagram is a major marketing platform. TikTok is becoming that way because it knows what you like, what you watch, and what to funnel into your face that you will enjoy consuming it and stay on the platform and stay engaged. So it is worth that much more money. It's that's kind of the give and take, I guess.
I'll share a anecdotal thing, but it's interesting. Katie, my wife, does meditation for women, and in March she created a coronavirus meditation series to help women that were dealing with coronavirus. Like, it was scary. Like, you didn't know what was going to happen. So because podcasting is international, you have hundreds of countries, 110, 20, most people have at least 60, 70 countries listening. What we learned from the data, which is really interesting, they must have had the worst outbreak in Iran early on, because her number 3 or 4 country was women from Iran. And you don't see that. Iran doesn't even rank in the top, 30, maybe 50, 30 to 50 range. And I remember, they were using her podcast as an outlet to meditate at night to deal with the stress, as coronavirus was literally ripping through their country, and they were trying to hide it and not show, weakness. But Adam, I just remember the data. I was like, holy crap, look at this. And for us, I know for my wife, it gave her a lot of meaning to create a show knowing that she's helping these women in Iran who might not be able to talk about something, but they could at least meditate to try and go to sleep at night. But it was just an odd thing to see Iran shoot to number 4, because usually that's
Right.
Australia or something. And it was interesting to see that in the data.
For sure.
From taking it back to top things of the year and stuff like that. I mean, I think that also being able to see that data, that's how this cool shit gets made, that ends up benefiting. If there was no data and there was no, how many people are on a podcast and who's doing it, and if they weren't getting kind of this feedback of who's creating podcasts and how are they creating and what are they creating for and how well are things selling or whatever, then you wouldn't end up with products that actually end up benefiting the podcaster down the road. It's all data. Everything is content is the through point. That's how you engage with it, but data is the back end that drives it.
Well, it's
That's
gotten a lot better now, because I remember in the early years, 7 or 8 years ago, you'd get these scammers show up.
Yeah.
They would Twitter bomb their episode literally 50 times a day. I'm not exaggerating. And then get bots crawl on it, and they'd be like, "Oh, I'm the top," and then the charts didn't know how to read it yet. And you knew that the show sucked, because you'd listen. You're like, "There's no way this guy out of the gate's getting 50 or 100,000 downloads." So I'm glad that we've transitioned out of that. That's always the Wild West in the beginning of anything, so you don't see that as much. So I'm glad that we've been able to clamp down on it. They have standards, and it was all self-organized. The IAB, whatever that stands for, Molly. They self-organized to create what is a download, and that's pretty cool that they created the standards to keep things clean before they got regulated.
Right. Somebody's got to do it.
Yeah.
Adam, you got any other top equipment picks for the...
Of course I do.
Of course you do.
Of course I do. I have 3 more of my most favorite things. One of them we talked about last week.
We could talk about it again.
We talk about it again because it's worth noting. The PreSonus PD-70, $129. Looks great, sounds great, affordable.
USB or XLR?
XLR only.
XLR.
But again, PD, purpose built for podcasting. I mean, it looks fairly similar to something Marcus and Molly are both using. So it looks the part, but it's affordable. It's kind of taken into account that, we're not all in mega broadcast studios. It doesn't require additional equipment to sound right, and easy to sound good. I mean, that's part of it. You had to fail a bunch of times to find a mic that worked for you, or you had to figure out how to make things work, or you were using a condenser microphone because you were a musician at some point and you had one, and that's what someone else told you to buy. Now there's an easy answer, and what a cool time. What a cool time for that. In the same vein, Zoom, I think if I had to give an award to the company that nailed it this year for podcasting, it's Zoom.
Zoom.
Right at the end of the year, though, Shure came out swinging. Don't get me wrong. This thing is a monstrous piece of equipment.
New
The
standard,
MV7
in my
is absolutely a new standard. This will persist to be the industry standard podcasting microphone at the top of the line for a good long while, and there's good reason for it. But Zoom Zoom is for the masses, and has made ridiculously awesome products that are super affordable, that deliver a really high level of just audio fidelity. The DM1, which is another very familiar looking microphone. This is $79.
Wow.
What?
This is $79. It's dynamic. It's an XLR only, but it's $79. It sounds great. So you can buy 4 of these. Not going to be a problem. If you had to, do something. And they made a kit, the ZDM1 podcast kit, that comes with a set of headphones and a cable for $119. Like, it's becoming very affordable to get good quality stuff without having to, there's a lot of headphones out there. There's a lot of cables. There's a lot of things to research, and you don't need to be afraid buying a kit. A lot of podcast kits that existed before this were garbage. Like, they were just really junky because podcasting was kind of seen on the lower end of the audio spectrum, and the ones that were playing the game right were investing in the right sort of products. Zoom changed that whole script, and they came out with a kit that is affordable, but is at a quality that is respectable, so that you're not starting at zero. You're not going to enjoy doing something if you're producing something that sounds okay. It's just not going to be fun. You want to make something that sounds cool, that sounds good, that you're proud to have people listen to and share with other people. So, kudos to Zoom for listening to the audience, listening to the community of people, understanding kind of where a lot of people wanted to be at, kind of in the price spectrum. It's certainly not rock bottom, but it's certainly more affordable than a lot of other things out there, and it sounds really good, and it sounds right. Like, it's got a nice top end to it. It's easy to listen to. It's going to cut through when you're driving in your car. It's not too bass heavy. It just sounds right. But my most favorite thing of this year,
Yes,
is the PodTrak P4.
Me too. Yeah.
This thing.
Can you hold that closer?
I'm gonna open it up.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm gonna open it up.
Look at this, Molly. This is an unboxing video. This is great.
Oh, snap.
Hashtag
I love this.
unboxing.
When we talk about purpose built for podcasting, Zoom aced it.
Whoa, look at that.
They aced it. 4 mic inputs. And Marcus, the next one we do, we got to do this. These preamps can drive an SM7B on their own, which is remarkable.
On 2 AA batteries, right? Or 4?
2 AA batteries, which
Two.
is also remarkable. Phone call channel and USB call channel. So this can handle 2 different sets of outside sources and record them multi-track record them on their independent channels. You got the sound pads a la Rodecaster, so you can launch different intro music or commercials and such like that. 4 headphone outputs.
That's a big deal.
That's the biggest deal on one thing. It's $199.
Wow.
Game changer. And it fits in your pocket. You'd have to have very big pockets, but if you can fit an iPhone in it, you can
That's
put a
amazing.
PodTrak in it.
Of all the things that came out this year, this is the game changer.
Yeah.
If you're thinking podcasting and it's audio first and you want something that is going to deliver ease, this is as plug and play as a recorder can get. Like, you can turn this thing on and hit record, and it's automatically doing all the stuff that you used to have to dive into another Zoom recorder or another recorder and set it up to do multi-track. This is meant for out of the box as multi-track recording. Out of the box, everything sounds quiet and clean. It has the headphones on it. It's just ready to record. You don't need to know too much to capture good audio. What you do with it after that is different, but
it all starts with capturing it. Yeah.
You're setting yourself up for success. And this is, in the world of podcasting equipment, it's mega affordable, and they did a phenomenal job. And they've got more coming. We've already talked about the P8 and kind of like the extension of the P4, but this, I think, is the best representation of where I see a lot of people starting, a lot of people wanting to feel comfortable investing kind of at this price point, at least to begin with. And you're not shooting yourself in the foot by starting at this price point. You're so far and above where people could have started even the beginning of this year. This didn't exist. So they're really listening. They've done a phenomenal job. Zoom is on point right now.
Zoom wins 2020.
They
podcasters.
are on their way, and
Both of
they
them.
really did listen. Yeah, both of them. That was pretty confusing for a lot of people
Yeah.
for quite some time. But they did a great job.
I'm surprised there weren't like QAnon conspiracies about Zoom like actually being like the devil's spawn child because they took over video and audio in 2020. Although I should just go ahead and start that up.
Yeah,
Let me,
you just did.
let me
You
jump
think
on
you
over
did?
to Reddit real quick. That's where they are, right? I don't know. Parlor, one of the two. Yeah, and I think that's such a solid piece of equipment, especially for people that want to have a nicer mic that's not a USB mic. Then you start talking about an audio interface, and they just glaze over.
Yeah.
And trying to, I was talking to somebody about possibly selling her one of my Line 6 lapel mics because I'm like, you do a lot of talking to the cameras, but you're going to need an audio interface. And like, I just lost her completely because it's like, well, that's going to be another $300-400, whatever. Then you got to know how to use it. I feel like this is just like, plug it in, right? It's the MV7 of audio interfaces. Like, even I could use it,
You take any microphone, you plug it into this thing, and you are so much better off than you
Right.
could have been when this year started. So, and this can be an audio interface. This can be a portable recorder.
Right.
The phone call feature is super sweet. It does the whole mix minus thing. So, again, like technology opening doors and allowing you to create in a different way and allowing you to try some more complex styles of creating or just engaging with people. This allows you to do all of it.
Zoom.
And very easy. Like the learning curve on this thing is like you're just ready to rock.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Go Zoom.
It's awesome. Go Zoom.
That's awesome.
All right, so Marcus. Oh, do you have another one? You have a third one?
No,
don't
those
you?
are my picks. That's it.
Okay, so
Those are my picks.
so
That's it.
Marcus, I know I've got an innovation to throw in the ring, but you got a couple innovations of 2020 for the podcast world.
Yeah, the 2020, I feel like from a software perspective, the main thing for podcast editing that showed a huge leap and gained a lot of popularity was Descript.
You took mine. I had that.
Yeah. So
He's right. I had a friend yesterday tell me, "Have you heard of Descript? Like, it's been around for quite some time, but this is the year it took off."
Yes, exactly. And they've added
What does Descript do?
Terrifying.
Descript. Yes, it is.
Is that the one where you can
Yes.
delete your words? I saw that and it blew my mind. I thought that was the wildest thing I'd ever seen.
It's pretty crazy. I even just
you can
use it
type
just
the
for the
words back
speech
in.
recognition to do transcripts for certain podcasts when I need them, really quick, and I can't wait for, Go Transcript or Rev to get back to me, in 3 days or whatever. But the way it just works is fantastic, and for people who are not audio engineers, being able to edit the actual content instead of looking at a linear waveform editor is just a game changer, for the industry. I feel like. So.
I was at NAB 4 years ago, and I literally, it's like 1.5 million square feet. I walked the whole floor, and then at the end I found the startup section in the corner, and there was the kid from Descript, and I'm like, "What do you do?" And he showed me, and my jaw dropped. The first thing I asked was, "Can I invest in this?" And he goes, "We're a startup the people from Groupon funded it. One of the Groupon founders. He was telling me back then." And I was like, "You got to come to PodFest." He's like, yeah. He never showed up. He went to my competitors, which is fine. But I was like, "I found you first. I'll help you out. Come over to PodFest." But I just remember the first thing I said was like, "Can I invest in this?" It's the only thing I can. I was like, "This will take off, like, because anyone could delete a word, document words and ums and back and forth."
Yeah.
But I was blown away. And they were hiding in the back of NAB, which is a huge show. Good luck trying to find. It's like a needle in the haystack, but I couldn't believe it.
Nice. So, well, I have one to throw in the mix that I just recently found. A company called Trint. So, in the same vein. And so, Trint is a transcribing company as well. But what's really cool about them is their on-screen editor. They make it super easy. And then I set up I love Zapier, so I set up an automation. So anytime you put a new file into a particular Google Drive folder, it automatically uploads it to Trint, and then it sends a Slack notification to the team member when it's ready to be edited. So whenever Matt finishes, he just makes a copy of the file, moves it into that folder with the due date and the name, automatically gets transcribed. So now it doesn't take that like 3-day wait for Rev or whoever to get back to you. It's a game changer. We just started using them, but I'm a big fan.
How do you spell it?
Trint. Big fan, so got to throw their hat in the ring. And then I had to give a shout out to Riverside FM. You know, we're recording on them tonight. Everything that I've seen from using their platform thus far, I love it. I really love it. And even just the aesthetics of the screen with the like dark gray background behind the videos. I've been using it for all my meetings and like all, you know, I had a hangout with a girlfriend of mine and who works for the State Department in Tajikistan this morning. So she was getting ready to go to bed. And so I was like, yeah, I have a whole new studio. And so she was like, this is amazing. This is so much better than Zoom. So,
making you look good too.
Right. You know, and
clients.
so the technology, right? Like they do local recording. So they're recording the audio and the video locally. And then they send those packets of information through the system on the back end. So as a podcaster or video creator, I feel like this is a great program to use. I actually recorded a video for my clients last week and I just opened up Riverside and recorded it in here instead of using QuickTime. And it came out so clean and so clear. I don't know if QuickTime does 4K, but it looked awesome. So I got to shout out Riverside FM. We have an enterprise account with them at Heartcast Media, so we're excited about that. But if you're doing video, this is a solid investment to make in your program for 2020 or 2021. What else, Marcus?
That I didn't make a long list. That's pretty much it. The rest of it, like, yeah, the rest of it people don't care about. It's like all these obscure audio things and that's the thing. Like with audio, there's not a whole lot of innovation coming. Like to me, what the software is doing for the MV7 is more important than any new plugins that came out. And there hasn't been any kind of new groundbreaking innovation since I feel like RX8. You know, or RX came out however many years ago. They just kind of iterated on it, but it didn't really. I guess Isotope did do a dialogue match thing where it kind of matches the ambience between two clips of audio to make them sound. So if you don't know but it's pretty tricky to use. So you still have to kind of know what you're doing. It's not as easy as like what the MV7's doing in their software.
So awesome. So awesome. Well, Chris, can you tell us what is going on in the PodFest Expo world? What's next? What's going on? How can people support you? What are we doing?
Yeah, go to podfestexpo.com and subscribe to our email list or join us on our Facebook group, PodFest. But more importantly, we're gearing up to shatter our Guinness World Record, so that'll probably be one of the best times to meet a community of people from all over the world. The coolest part about this whole virtual thing is we had 46 countries represented all over the world. India was our number 3 attendee country at Pod Global. But like you were saying, we had people in Nairobi from all over the world. It was just amazing. So
what's the record?
We hit 5,003. We had more, but unfortunately, because I had to go through an actuarial process, a lot of things got discounted. So the record is 5,003 attendees. Like at any one, it was hosted through Huva, which integrated with Zoom, but we had 500 people at all times between 3 solid Zoom rooms. So we're expecting over 10,000 attendees. And one of the tips I want to give for, you were talking about tools, Pod Pages. I mean, he was a sponsor, and I think his thing is like $15 a month, the premium. Yeah. And he's like, I've never had a conference actually like break even and make money. He goes, I don't know where you're finding these people, but I think hundreds of people signed up on Pod Pages. Our audience is rabid. Like if a sponsor is there and they put in the time, our people support. So we're looking forward to that. We're going to launch a little 2-week crowdfunding, get everybody a huge steep discount. We'll have a freemium, because, we want to promote people in India and all the different countries and not have a paywall in front of them. So the whole thing, you'll be able to buy premium access, but it'll be free for everybody to attend. So I'm just trying to work out the economics to keep it free. So that'll be the first week in March with a pre-week before, and it'll have VidFest in it too. So we'll have a full video conference as well. And then the live in-person event will be mid-June. We feel very confident that it will not only go on, but it'll be quite large from what we've seen on a lot of the vaccination schedules for the people who are getting vaccinated. I get that that's more controversial than any other topic ever covered this year, which is tough to do. But based on what we're seeing, we think in mid-June we will be back in action for our in-person event, and we're just excited. I mean, we're hosting, Anna's going to be probably hosting the Black Pod Collective for Black Pod Fest. There's going to be a lot of, and that's not our conference, that's her conference. She does an amazing job. Our goal is to help her launch her own conference, and where she could support her community and bring everybody together. So there's a lot of really nuanced things that we're doing behind the scenes that we think is going to bring people together. So just go on our site, podfestexpo.com, and get the updates. But we've over-delivered for every sponsor this year. We're excited to keep doing that. But the perception I have to fight is bad virtual events. Like, they don't understand our community is not like any other community. So like, you're paying a premium for the interactivity that we have. So we're excited to keep doing that. And without them, we couldn't keep it free for all the people all over the world. So 10,000 people, Adam, that's the goal. But even at 5,000, it's a win for everybody. But we learned something. People were registering their people in their company under the same email. Well, Guinness doesn't count that, even though it's 4 different people. If that makes sense. So we had to discount like 700 people.
Wow.
So we were at 57 and change. Probably legitimately it was 5,500. But we had to delete I wasn't included. Like, my wife couldn't be included. All these weird rules. Like, if someone was related to you. It's like, well, sweepstakes, right? Like, if Molly works for, she helps you, she can't win the thing. So I'm not a fine print guy. I didn't read any of that. So then when we started going, the fact that we made it by 3, they set the bar at 5,000. We made it by 3. That was a home run.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's
great.
awesome.
Can't wait to see it.
Yeah, so this will, and remember, people will still be kind of locked down in March, so it'll have the biggest impact. I don't know if we'll ever be able to, I think we'll grow, but to attain that kind of number and people's attention is just very tough to do.
It's going to be awesome.
For
Thanks,
sure.
brother.
Well, I know Heartcast Media wants to be a part of that, and I'm sure Podcast Outfitters wants to be a part of that too, and I'm sure Me Only Louder wants to be a part of that too. So you got, 3 willing participants right here for sure.
I'm excited. Thank you for the support and just being part of the community. I've had my ups and downs this year, but having these community events really lifted my spirits up, and I would leave on a high, like our live events, and that's what kept me going. So having like a future to live into is a big thing, because in the meantime we can't really see each other like we'd like to until that time. So this keeps me focused and positive, and bringing everybody together, I think, is a good thing, because in this world you can get distracted very easily.
Indeed. Even from the comfort of your own couch, it's hard to stay focused. For sure. Well, I think on that note, we'll wrap this thing up. It's the end of the year, right? It's the beginning of a new year. Time to set your destiny, figure out what it is you're trying to do, create intentional content. And understand that you always have a community around you, especially if you're in the podcast community, especially if you're hanging out at Podfest Expo or any other online events. I just really can't say enough good things about how positive and real of a community that whole environment really is. So, check it all out. All the links will be in the description. All the equipment that we mentioned will be in the description. All the links, everything we talked about will be below. There's even articles that we reference in our highlights of 2020. And, if you guys are enjoying this, we'll try a little experiment. If you're enjoying this podcast, please leave us reviews or comment on the YouTube channel. I don't really care if you share it on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn sucks. There, I said it. So join us next week. We'll be back. Looking forward to our next guest next week. We'll have a lot to talk about. Thank you again, Chris, for coming on the show. We always love hanging out with you. So thank you for everything, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks, guys.